Hey everybody, first time trying this, but I wanted to do a little tutorial about the RV just to kind of make it easier for your trip, kind of give you a general overview of the different components. It's starting to get dark here in a little bit, so I'm going to start with the outside and we'll work our way inside after. First thing we'll show you is the chassis of the vehicle. There's two components, primary components to the RV. There's the chassis, or the actual vehicle part of it, the truck, which is a 2017 Mercedes Sprinter. The chassis is a 2018 Winnebago 24J. Take you inside here. As you open up the door, some information here about the vehicle, should you need a VIN number. It also gives you the air pressure for each tire. Winnebago recommends that it's 60 pounds per square inch in each of the tires. Okay, so first thing we'll do, open it here and show you the latch to pop the hood is right around here. Pull that back. Okay, really not a whole lot to do in here, hopefully. But as you slide the hood open, you can see it's got this latch here, and it has like a little U shape down here. So when you lift up to close it, you just lift up the hood and then slide that down, and pretty straightforward. Okay, so primary things in here are wiper fluid. This is actually where you would jump the vehicle if you needed to jump the vehicle. There is a really handy button inside the chassis, which, should the vehicle battery die, you can actually push a button that will draw power from the house battery and allow you to jump the vehicle based off of the power from the house battery. Okay, so this is cool in here. This is correct. It should only be halfway full. If you are going on a longer trip, you may need to refuel the diesel emission fluid. We fill that up for you before you pick it up, but what that does is sprays a little fluid in the exhaust to cut down on emissions on the diesel engine. You probably can go 6 or 7 fuel ups before you'd have to add any fluid. There is a button or alert light inside that will tell you if you need to add more DEF fluid, and do add it once you get to a gas station. It'll go for a few more fuel ups, but eventually it'll prevent you from starting the engine if you don't put that fluid in there. But again, we can go on a pretty long trip and not have to fill it up once. So that's really it in here. That's all that you should need. So I'll go ahead and shut that. So as we go inside the chassis here, pretty straightforward. These are kind of fleet vehicles for FedEx and other things. They're not too many bells and whistles. Over here you have your headlights. Down here, this is this button that I was telling you about, that if the chassis battery is dead and not starting, you can push the brake in, push this button, and then start the motor, and it'll start right up. Should for some reason your truck battery and your house battery both die, you would then run the generator to charge up the house battery, and then you could then push this button to start the vehicle. So it's really nice. Really hard to get stranded without having a way to start the vehicle. So as you start the vehicle up, let's see if it starts. Okay, it did start, but what I'll do is I'll show you what happens and how you can start it with this other button. So let's say the battery is not working for the vehicle. Go ahead and you just push this button in. And then it would start right up. Okay. The Winnebago does have this head unit system. It works pretty well most of the time. It has a rear camera backup, which is probably the most helpful component. You need to program it and connect your Bluetooth and everything before driving. It won't let you do much of it while you're driving the vehicle for safety reasons. It does have Sirius XM. You can go in here and you can do your Bluetooth. It's connecting to my phone, but you can go in and add your phone pretty easily by selecting this button. You know, as far as the navigation system that's in there, we prefer to use Google Maps. It'll play the audio through the speakers and just use Google Maps. But the navigation system for Rand McNally does have some RV alerts on here, so it does detect if you're on a road and you're going over the speed limit. It'll blurt at you that you're going too fast. If you're on a road that it says the vehicle is too heavy, you know, that it will notify you of that. Something to be very cautious of is the vehicle height. It's just under 12 feet. So I would make sure that you have 12 feet clearance going under any bridges. We've been driving before and the system will sometimes beep because it will know that there's a low bridge up ahead. It doesn't happen very often, but if you are taking shortcuts and country roads, that's where you tend to run into low train overpasses occasionally. But down here, just kind of the standard temperature controls, your hazard light here, okay? It's just a pretty straightforward shifter. It's got reverse, neutral, and then drive. It does have the Triptronic shifting. If you were wanting to climb up a hill and get in a little bit lower gear, you can do that. Most of the time it works pretty well just shifting on its own. So I don't know if you heard it, but there is an automated staircase for the house, and once you put the vehicle in drive, it will open that up automatically, so you never have to worry about driving away with the staircase not open. So I'm just going to turn the air down here real quick. All right, so as you can see, when I open the door, the stairs will automatically open. And then, you know, something with the stairs, there are two settings down here. We leave it so it's off. So that means it only opens when you open the door, and then it'll only go back up once you put the vehicle in drive. Otherwise, what tends to happen is the stairs are going up and down, and it's kind of wanting to hit you in the shins as you're coming in the stairs. One other thing to mention about the stairs is if you were driving the vehicle and parked it curbside, be careful opening up the door from the outside, because the stairs will not deploy when you stop the vehicle. But if you walk around outside and you're parked very close to a curb, those stairs kind of want to jump out you, and I've almost lost a toe being pretty close to a curb and having a staircase come down. So just be careful of that with yourself and any kids. It started raining. I'm glad we started it outside first. So now I'm going to go back. Again, I'll show you. You're just going to kick this in drive, and you can hear that staircase go up. Okay. The cruise control works well. Everything else is pretty standard. There's some general alerts here. You know, sometimes I've accidentally hit this button while driving and it'll show a temperature gauge. That's really not a concern. You know, it's just giving you the temperature. If there's an issue with the vehicle, which we've not had, we've been informed, it'll really make a alert for you to pull over and stop the vehicle. Parking brake, this is a good thing to cover. This has what's called a collapsible parking brake. And you can see the parking brake here. And the parking brake is on right now. What I can do is I can collapse this, meaning I can just push it down. The parking brake is still engaged, and the best way to determine is just looking at the indicator light on here. And the reason why it's collapsible like that is so that if you could have the brake on, you can then collapse it, and then you can swivel this seat around to hang out and enjoy company in the back. I'm gonna go on to the outside again here in a minute. Okay, so here we are back at this compartment. Now I'm just gonna show you how to empty the tanks, everybody's favorite part. So what you're gonna do is get the bag with the drain pipe out of the side storage compartment and connect that to the RV, and also connect that to the sewer dump out at the RV park. Before you do that, you might want to put on some rubber gloves, which we'll have under the kitchen sink for you. So once you get the pipe connected, you're always going to drain the black waste tank drain first. What that does is gets all the solids through. You can then go inside and check the panel to make sure that the tank did drain properly. If for some reason it's still saying that it's partially full, you want to run the toilet and make sure you put plenty of water down there so that tank can drain completely. Once you've drained that black waste drain, then you can go ahead and do the gray drain. So I'm going to go ahead right now. You just take this lever, make sure it's connected well, and you're going to pull it out. You'll hear it draining. Sometimes can take a little bit depending on how full the tank is. And then once you're done, you'll close that valve and go ahead and do the gray. That then kind of rinses your pipe. At the RV park, they'll have freshwater, potable water stations, and also have other stations with a hose where if you need to rinse up and everything, you use that hose to do so. I sometimes take the pipe off and put a little bit of that other water through to just rinse the drain out a little bit. You can go ahead and put it back in a fresh garbage bag and put it back in the compartment. Yeah, that's it. Okay, back outside now. Weather wasn't really cooperating, but we are clear now. On the side here, you can see the slide is out right now. When I'm inside, I'll show you how to do that. There's really not a lot to do from the exterior other than when you're sliding it out to be sure that it's not going to hit anything or anybody. There's a kind of a canopy on top. It's automatic, so if leaves or some sticks fall on there, it'll just roll them off as it closes. Down below, you have two storage bins. They kind of pass through. I do have in here some of those safety kind of triangles that if you were to have to do emergency stop on the side of the road for safety. You know, most things on an RV you don't really want to slam. These doors and the door to the RV itself are kind of the exception. They do require a little bit of a good bang to shut them. You'll see on the keychain there's 3 different keys. The gray key operates all the storage containers on the side. Here to the right of the door is the fuel up for propane and also for the vehicle itself. The propane I'll show you first here. There's a little compartment down here. There is a compartment under here. You kind of pull that ball down. And there is also a second emergency shut off for the propane here. I do shut it off when it's filled. You won't be filling it yourself. You'll go to like a truck stop along the highway. Certain Menards also have it, but you're looking around for RV propane and they'll ask you to get out of the vehicle and they will top it off. It's not very expensive, but do shut that off when you fill it, and then you can also just click that back on when you're done. There's a second on and off switch on the inside of the vehicle. So on the inside of the door is the fuel fill up. You're supposed to use low sulfur diesel. A lot of truck stop, BP has some of the better diesel. If you would use that, it's just a little bit more fuel efficient. Pretty self-explanatory, the fuel compartment there. I do leave some other things here for you. Just some more kind of road safety things in the door. There's also a couple air checks and a few just kind of emergency flashlights and that sort of thing. There is also an adapter. Occasionally you'll stop at a spot to get air checked, and they won't have this adapter for the rear dualies. And what this does is it allows you to fill up from the inside and outside of the dually valve. There are valve extenders on the dually tires, so you can reach all the valves from the outside. This hubcap is something that pops off. You know, if you're going down a really bumpy road or find that you hit a pothole, next time you stop, just, you know, check and make sure those are banged on good. They're about 350 bucks if we lose one. But you can see the valves here, and there's another one in there that you can reach with those devices inside the door. Working our way to the back of the vehicle, there's nothing you need to do with this sanitary flush. I've taken care of that. You do it a couple times a year, and that's all ready to go. So back in the compartment here, this is where there's a lot of different things. Your hose is stored here. You have a foot wash back here as well, which is handy. In order to use the foot wash, you need to turn the two on and off valves for the water, as well as turn the water pump on. You'll see inside this water pump switch here is one of 3 water pumps, and you can click it on, you'll hear it, but you also see the LED light turn on. Okay. As far as this, I've done another little video to show you how to dump the wastewater. But as far as filling, there's 2 ways to fill. The way that I prefer to do it is right here. You're going to connect your hose, and then you're going to turn this valve here to tank fill. Okay, and when you do it to tank fill, it's going to push water inside the tank as you're running it. You can kind of overfill it. You'll see it start to trickle out. You'll do an overfill, but you know, don't let that go too long. It can kind of push back into the system the wrong way. Once you're done, make sure you go back to normal. If you fill your tank and you find like the water pressure and the pump's not working very well inside, it's likely because you forgot to turn this back onto normal to operate the vehicle. As you do need the pump if you're not using the pressure from the hose. So in other words, you can have this on normal. If you're water pushing in here from the outside, that will supply the water pressure. Otherwise, if you're not hooked up to the hose and you're just using the storage water, you do need to run the pump to pressurize the plumbing system. Okay. That's really about it in here. You know, if you should want to drain fresh water, if you're driving back, sometimes people like to lose a little weight if they're hauling 3 or 4 hours and not going to be using the water. You can turn all these 3 valves at the bottom and drain your fresh water. I never really find it necessary. You do notice it if your gray tank is pretty full and your black tank's pretty full, and then you went and topped off your fresh water, you can feel the extra load on the vehicle. So I don't like traveling with everything very full, but you certainly can do it. So your this little hose in here, you can just ignore. That's for winterizing it. That just stays here at the bottom. So you have your foot sprayer that's tucked up in there, and then your water hose. There is a little thing down here if you wanted to run the water hose through this little compartment. You can do that. So you can close this door at night. When you hook up to a campsite, please screw this on first. It'll protect the RV and your trip. Certain campsites can have over pressurization where it can cause damage to the RV's plumbing. So if you just screw this on and then you're going to hook your hose into this right side here, that'll make sure it'll never put too much water pressure into the RV from that. Yeah, I'll be available throughout your trip to call, and you can also reach out to Barrington Motors. They have a sticker next to the door. That's where we purchased our RV. They've been very helpful, and you could probably just call them as well if you can't reach us in an event of some emergency, and ask for their service department. They're super helpful. We'll get back to, I'm going to show you how to do the power later, but in here you also have, there's a cable cord. Some campsites have cable TV. There's also a cable system there where sometimes it's just by antenna at the campsite. If the campsite has it and you can play around with that, you've kind of got to have the TV scan the channels to find out what's available. So when you get to the campsite, most of them are, a lot of them you'll find are level, some are not. We do have stabilizers on this RV. If you look up here, you'll see two switches right up here. And what you can do is, if you push this down, you'll see this light come down. These just kind of take the vehicle off the suspension a little bit at night while you're sleeping. If you're walking around, or if it's really windy, it just won't be bouncing around as much on the suspension. They're not really meant to be levelers. However, if it's just a little bit off level, you can use them to level it out a tiny bit. You can tell when it's kind of pushing it too hard, but I can show you here. You know, you can kind of tell when it's getting off the shocks, and then you can tell when you're kind of pushing it a little bit too far. You know, and then I'll sometimes do them more evenly. I do one at a time, but then I'll do one and then the other, just to kind of not put all the pressure on just the one. But those are really handy. And then whenever you do an RV, you always want to walk around like 3 times after you think you're ready to go, and make sure everything's ready to go. Your cable's tucked up, the levelers are up, the vent for the window is closed. There's a lot of things that can break very easily if you drive off with it still connected. And those stabilizers are certainly one of them. Working around to the back of the RV, really not a lot here. There's the hitch. We request that no one tow vehicles with RV. It's just a different thing for insurance, and it's a lot higher risk, so we ask that nobody do that. There's the ladder. It's really for access to get up there. You don't need to go up there, and we ask that no one go up there, and please do not store anything up there. It can just be rather dangerous. Working around to the other side, this here is your generator, which we can talk about more inside. You don't need to do anything with it outside, and we'll kind of go over that more while we're in there. In the back here, this compartment, in the black bag, we have the sewage clean out pipe, which I'll go over in another video, or another segment of the video later. And then I just have some jumper cables and also fix a flat. This is a nice big storage compartment. Goes underneath the bed, and it kind of goes in there. We typically put, you know, water, cases of water, and drinks and things that we need to access that are bulky. You know, sometimes they'll smell cooler in there, just easy access. And then this is one of the larger storage areas for the RV. This is an alternate filling way. You can fill fresh water from this. You can just unlock this, and you can kind of put the hose near it and fill it that way if you prefer not to actually screw in the hose. I'm going to take a break, and we'll get back to you. We'll start here with the furnace and water. Okay, back outside here. This is the furnace. Really nothing to do with that on the outside. And this is the water heater, the propane water heater. For the furnace, there's this is a propane furnace. There's also electric heat that will work when it's not too cold, probably 40-45 degrees. It's kind of a heating element that runs through the vent system. The fan's a little noisier on the electric heat. The propane really doesn't use a ton of propane if it's not cold out. It's much quieter and much nicer heat, so I always prefer to just use the propane unless I'm running low on it. Up here, one other storage compartment. We do have a few things in here for you. With all of our stuff, you're welcome to take it or not take it. But there's 2 blocks you want to bring. The blue bags, those are leveling blocks. You can kind of play Legos and make some pyramids to level out an uneven campsite if needed. There's some fire starters, and then just a basic toolkit. We ask that you don't do major repairs or really any repairs to the RV. Please call us if you have a problem. especially when it comes to anything electrical related. We haven't had any issues with the vehicle. We did have one fuse blow when kids were playing with a switch. There's a kind of a vented window up here, and there's a switch there as well as a switch down here, and we had children playing with both of them, and it did cause a problem. So working around the front of the RV, really not a whole lot left to say. We'll show you the awning. The awning is one of the things that is more prone to breakage in RVs if you leave them up during the wind, night. So you want to put it down if you're leaving the RV ever, or if you're going to bed. But it works very well. You can look inside here, right inside the door. There's switches. You're gonna just hit awning out, and hold that. And I always look at that middle bar. Once that kind of gets to the high point, you're getting close. But you're really looking for the little flap on the end to come down. And that'll let you know it's out. You don't want to overextend it. It can cause issues. So my flap's stuck up from the rain a little bit. And another thing to do is you can turn on the awning. There's an awning light. And if you turn that on when you roll it out, once those lights are here, you're as far as you should go. If you're using the awning light at night, you can kind of roll it up a little bit and dim the lights down, which is kind of a nice indirect light. For the stereo system, outdoors, there's some outdoor speakers here. This is for the coach head unit. It's JX70A something or other, but when you go to your Bluetooth on your cell phone, you're just going to hold down, pair, turn your Bluetooth on, and once you sync it, it works pretty well. You can click on zones, and zone A is the main like eating area, zone B is up for bunk, and zone C is for coach, I say, or outside. That's the outdoor speaker. So when you're adjusting the volume, it'll only adjust the volume for whatever zone it's on. So it's a little tricky. It's not like it has a master volume where it's going to control all three zones. If you want to lower the volume, you've got to do it independently by zone. Otherwise, it's just going to lower it in that one individual zone. So down here again, you got the awning light. You can click that off, and then to pull the awning back in, you're just going to hold the end down, and it's pretty easy to tell when it's done its job. That plastic cover snaps back over it, and again, you just don't want to push it more than it does. A lot of these low voltage electrical things are made to blow a fuse rather than break something. And we haven't had it happen with this ever, but you just want to stop once it does do its job. There you go. Plugged into what's called like a power shore. So if you're at a campsite and you're all set up, this is how you're going to be doing. You're going to be pulling power from an outside source. The campsites are 30 watt and 50 watt. You can tell you'll see the 30 watt plug in here soon, or 30 amp, excuse me. It's a 30 amp or 50 amp. This RV is a 30 amp. You can't plug into anything but a 30 amp. And don't ever put an adapter on to plug into a 50 or 110. It can really damage the RV. What it'll do is it'll fry the electrical panel, and it'll really cut your trip short because everything will shut down. So 30 amp only. I'm going to show you how to disconnect it if you were at a campsite. Going over to the power shore plug-in here. We have a surge protector hooked up, just like the water gauge where you're going to screw that in to protect the RV. This is probably even more important. This is a surge protector that will protect if there's lightning strikes, or if you're at a campsite where they have surges and influxes in power, which can happen because of storms, but it can also happen because of just a poor campground, or also because of air conditioners at the campground running. So kind of doing it backwards here. Right now the RV is plugged into the power shore, and I'm going to just go ahead and unplug it and show you how to plug the RV back in so it's ready to drive. Okay. So you don't need the surge protector when you're just plugging it back into the RV. So the RV does need to be plugged into itself in order to operate. So here's the cord where it was plugged into the power shore. Go back here. I have an extension just where we have it plugged in at our home. So here's my 30 amp plug-in. Okay, you can see the fitting on it. And now I'm going to go ahead and plug that back into the RV. And you can see right in here on the left-hand side, the round place where it plugs in. You're going to take the cord backwards, like so. A little tricky, but you just plug that in, okay? So what I didn't mention is that if you have anything running in the RV, with the exception of like low voltage LED lighting, you're going to want to turn everything, or the fridge and the lights are okay, but if you have a fan running, or you have the air conditioning running, or the heater running, or water heater, you want to shut everything off before you unplug and plug back in. So right now when I unplugged, I turned the air conditioning off in the RV. I'm plugging back in, and what you do is just kind of take this and you'll loop that in, and then you'll be able to shut that compartment. And I just tuck this up in here as well, so you have this with you on your trip. And this is probably one of the most important things, that if you have a big power issue, it can often be because you didn't plug into this. So one thing to note, when you do go to a campsite and you plug this in, you're gonna plug the cord into this, and then it takes a good 5 or 6 minutes for this to run a program to kind of go through all its little testing things. And then once you see the lights in the RV turn back on, that means you're in good shape. So now that I have this plugged in, important thing is to not forget to turn the RV back on. So if you ever have, like if I'm pulling the RV out of storage, the very, very first thing you do, if it's not plugged in, is you're gonna go back over to this main control panel by the steps, and you're gonna turn the coach on. So right now the vehicle's off, there's no power connected to anything. I'm gonna come inside this door, and you're gonna turn the coach battery on, okay? So at this point, the coach is now operating off of batteries below the steps for the coach, okay? So that will run its own little program. You turn the coach on, it does run its own program to kind of make sure the system's in order and kind of reboot itself. So if there's ever some minor issue you're having, what you're going to want to do is kind of go back to zero and start all over and see what the problem is. First thing you're going to do is try just turning the coach off, have everything off, all the systems off, and then turning it back on and see if there's still a problem that arises. If there's still a problem, you're going to check to see if there's an issue at the fuse panel. Okay, so now we've gone over everything outside. Just trying to beat the rain here and do the outside while we still have daylight. Just some other things to note about driving. Depending on the road you're on and the wind, the vehicle drives really nice. If you're on smooth roads, I find it very comfortable, 65 to 70 miles an hour, and I don't feel comfortable really above 70. It's just not a good feel. It just depends on how bumpy the roads are on. If you're, some of the nicer roads are kind of the backcountry roads that are kind of windy and hilly where you're going 50 miles an hour. It really handles quite nice. When you're on the highway, and you have trucks and things like that, it can be, and if it's windy, it can be a lot less fun if it's bad, but usually it's not an issue. But I do suggest that if you ever have extreme winds where you're just not feeling comfortable, that you pull over and just wait it out, because there's no reason to take that risk. of driving in unsafe conditions. Like when you're driving a vehicle, car, you count 2 seconds behind the vehicle in front of you. This vehicle drives nice, but it's much larger and heavier. You're going to want to give yourself about a 5-second count with the vehicle in front of you to make sure you have plenty of time to stop. The guy that kind of walked me through the RV first time explained it to me that when you're on an RV, you're kind of on vacation. Just slow down, enjoy it. People know you're in an RV. They're not expecting you to zip around turns and drive fast and be weaving in and out of lanes. Just slow down and enjoy the ride and be safe. We'll go ahead and get back to the inside here shortly and keep going. Fuse panel, if you do have a problem, then we haven't had issues other than that one fuse that blew. But there is breakers here. Second thing you would do after trying to reset the coach, maybe just come see if any of these primary breakers have flipped. If they have flipped, you can switch them one way then the other to reset them. When you're out guarding the fuse, we ask that you please do not touch the fuses. By us talking with the dealership, if there is something related to a fuse, we can figure out what's not working, because you won't lose power to the whole RV. You'll just lose power to a few items. So if you notice that you've lost power just to a few items and none of the breakers are having issues, it could be a fuse issue. We do have fuses on board in the glove box, but we ask that you don't do that without first contacting us and us working with the service provider at the dealership to see if there's an issue. Okay. Okay, so we're inside now. We're going to start with the main control panel that's located above the refrigerator. So here's the first thing, is this little control panel has a couple useful things on here. You can hit tank, so you can see when you pick up your vehicle, the freshwater tank should be full, LP gas propane should be full, and then your gray and black tank should be empty. There's 3 pump switches to turn the water on when you're just using the water pressure from within the RV and you're not plugged into a water source. So to do that, there's the one outside by the foot wash station, there's one here, and there's one in the bathroom. When you turn that pump on, you can hear the water go and then turn it off. You do want to try to keep that off when you're not using it inside the RV. This is the water heater. You have the electric, which works very well, and then this is the propane water heater. If you're plugged in at the campsite, you can use the electric. You can use both at the same time if you're trying to heat up the water fast. Please be careful. Both heaters can get the water very hot, scalding almost. The battery level here you can hit, and this will tell you the chassis battery level and also the house battery level. The gauges seem to work okay. I don't really rely on them much myself. I know that if I'm plugged in at the campsite at night, I'm going to have enough house battery to get me through the day running lights in my refrigerator. If I'm not plugged in at the campsite at night, I know I need to run my generator for about an hour each day to charge up the RV before bedtime, so the fridge stays on and the house batteries stay charged. If for some reason you're sleeping at night and you hear alarm go off, it's likely because you let the house battery die down too far, and it's a propane sensor kind of alert to let you know that the vehicle's lost power. So if you turn around down here below the microwave, there is a propane kind of gas leak detector. It doesn't mean that it's leaking if it goes off necessarily. If you lost power, this will let you know that you've lost power, and there is a hush button on there. Going back to the panel here, there's a second valve. There's the propane shutoff on the outside where you fill up, and here's another valve, does the same thing. You can leave that on the whole time. This is holding tank heater. This would only be if you're out in the winter and it's getting below freezing, that you would use this to keep the water tanks and plumbing heated to a certain temperature. Okay. This is a slide in and out button. We'll go over that kind of separate, but Big thing to remember is the slide will not go out or in if the emergency brake on the vehicle is not up and if the vehicle is not running. So do get some calls where people get confused where it's not going in or out. You do have to have the vehicle running and have the parking brake on. Another thing to note is when you go to push it for the first time, when it's coming in or out, sometimes you got to click it the once, it won't do anything, then you got to hit it a second time, then it will continue its process. This is a little solar panel. You don't need to do anything with this. It has a very small solar panel on top. It's really only meant to kind of keep some power to the house battery if it's in storage. So the solar panel is really not even enough to run the refrigerator, which is AC powered refrigerator. That's a low voltage refrigerator. A lot of RVs are running off of propane, so please note that this does run off electric if you're not plugged into the site, or if you don't have your house battery on, it will not work. Okay. There's two types of power in the RV. I'm no expert, but there's AC power and there's DC power. So the DC power is the low voltage power. The AC power, the way I remember it, is that's what runs the air conditioner, your bigger electrical appliances, the microwave, convection oven, TV, outlets, all have to have air conditioner, if I didn't say that, all have to have AC power. So your AC power is only going to come from when you have the generator on or you're plugged in. So you will not be able to use the TV, the AC outlets when you're not plugged in or running the generator. Please note, with the generator, you can use the generator. With our kids, once in a while they get an itch, and we're trying to keep things calm. There's nothing wrong with running your generator, going down the road for a while. I try not to run it for more than really an hour at a time. It just, you don't want to lose that on your trip by running it too hard. So you're back in the bed here, just to note, there are some outlets for USBs. There's some here. If you look under some of the different areas, there's a couple in the eating area. Those are USB outlets. Those will charge a phone without being plugged into a campsite or having the generator running. Okay. This last switch here for the inverter control is meant to, it can convert DC, or excuse me, DC power to AC. We don't use it very often. It does, there is a outlet on the storage cabinet outside directly to the left of the doorway. Down in that bunk, cabinet, you'll see a little white device in the left. If you want to run something outside, you can use that by turning this on. You would just hold this down, and that's going to turn your inverter on, and that'll allow that outlet to function. And it will also allow some of the outlets inside to work for lower voltage items. It's not enough to do a blow dryer or a toaster, but if you do have that on, it will be able to charge an phone or something low voltage that is plugged in through the outlet. Okay. We talked a little bit about electrical yesterday. There are several outlets in the RV, one in the bathroom, one by the bathroom sink, and one down here below the fridge, as well as one above the sink here. If for some reason those aren't working, again, you may want to check to see if this GFCI has tripped. You can reset it and test it. That is the GFCI outlet for the entire vehicle. So, and all those four outlets. Okay. See why we're keep going here. Kind of looking up at the RV. In the back, you have just your couple vents, smoke detector. If you go to the center, there is if the AC unit, if you're trying to cool off just the primary driving area, let's say you are trying to run the AC in the house while you're driving down the road, because otherwise you would only have the AC from the truck and keep the car pretty cool. But if it's a really hot day and you're driving in the sun, you may need to run the generator and the air conditioning while you're driving down the road. You can open these vents up here, and that'll just kind of focus the cool air here by the seating area. Otherwise, if at night you're trying to circulate the air through all the other ducts, you will want to have those closed. Just another smoke detector here. Speakers here, that's group B on the zoning. There's a light up here. There's some back by the bed. Click it once to turn it on, click it again, turn off. If you hold it down before you turn it on, it'll change to a little bit brighter light. So you got your bunk up here, flips down. There is a ladder that's stored here, and you just want to make sure when you put the ladder in, it goes in very level. These aren't very secure. It's really just meant to be a general mount, so you got to kind of slide it in and then really make sure those like C-hooks hook into there, and then you just support it down on the floor. Okay. While we're here, I'll just mention something about the door. The door has like a second and primary latch when you close, so if you just click it shut it a little bit, it's not going to be fully closed. As you can see, I can pull on it. Okay. If you're driving down the road and it's not fully shut, it's going to squeak, and it's really annoying. So you do want to just give this a really good slam. Again, one of the few things you want to really slam, just because a lot of things in the RV are made to be lightweight. They're not very sturdy. They can break, but that is one of the things that you do need to give a good slam so you don't have squeaks. Okay. Working our way back. There's a little duct here for the eating area, or for the bed up here. This has a screen, and both this. We don't really use this one a lot. If it's really hot and we don't have the air running, we will use the screen and open up this. The reason we don't use it a lot is the fear of leaving it open during the rain, or forgetting and leaving the campsite and having it rain, or driving down the road if with that open could just tear it off and break that, which would kind of make for an interesting day. The only one time we've had a problem with the fuse blowing is when the children were playing with this switch from the bunk bed, and the other one was down here, which also controls the same thing, and they were pushing them at the same time, and the fuse did blow, which happened to also be for the air conditioning, to close that, and a few other important things. So just be careful pushing those buttons at the same time. Going back here again, there is a vent here. There's a switch down by the refrigerator. Okay. Use that if you're kind of just cooking and boiling some water or something. You should always have a window open if you are using the stove cooktop to have ventilation, and use this fan both. You get a tour of the bathroom here. Okay. In the bathroom, on the ceiling, there's your house fan and also your bathroom fan. Here's the switch to adjust the speed. Here is the switch to adjust the direction of the fan. You want to have it off when you switch direction. We typically have it blowing up and out. This is a fuse. You don't need to mess with that, but there is also a cover up here, which we keep closed. Keep your cool air in, but if it's not a really hot night and you're not plugged in and you want to just use the windows, this will run off just the DC power, and you can open this up, turn this fan on, and then crack a window or two, and that's going to kind of help pull air through the home. As far as the bathroom goes, when we give you the RV, there will be a tablet in there. Just these bio tablets. I'm going to put one in here now. Different brands, but every time you empty the septic, the tanks black, you're going to need to put a new one in. So you're just going to put that in there. There's your water pump switch for the bathroom. Okay. and you're just going to give it a good flush. Okay. A couple things to note about the toilet. Don't be shy with putting a lot of water down when you flush with solids. It's just going to make the tanks easier to empty out later. So if you do put solids down, nothing but just bathroom waste, but put plenty of water down. And again, if for some reason when you're going to empty the black tank first, come check to see that it emptied out. If it's not emptied, it's probably an indication you're not putting enough water down in the toilet to have enough fluid to properly empty that tank. Okay. There's a little hose over here to rinse the toilet. You do need to be pushing the lever down in order to do that. It works okay on the pump from the RV, but works much better if you're actually hooked up to water at a campsite. Shower, pretty self-explanatory. This is just a little sun kind of place for tall people to put their head up. And then it's got the shower door. And that's really it for the bathroom. Okay, mention a couple things. These beds do recline in the back. You can lift them up and then they go down. Again, this is great storage under here. So we'll sometimes leave some water for you, small cooler, if you'd like to bring it with you. In the back here, there's one of 2 TVs. There's 5 remotes. They're all labeled which TV. This is the rear TV. If you go over to this TV cabinet, there's a latch under here, and there's an HDMI port here. This HDMI plug-in, whatever device you plug into that, will power both the TVs. So if you want to watch a DVD, whatever, you could watch the same movie on both TVs. If you want to watch one thing on one and one on the other, you'll have to play around with the HDMI cables to set that up. So again, we leave remotes in here. We have a couple movies. When closing this, you just kind of have to lift up a little bit and make sure that's fully closed like that. Okay, going over to the refrigerator. Again, when we give you the RV, you'll have it been cooled down. I would suggest you leave it on 5. These are not very robust refrigerators. You want to try to put in cool foods or food that's already been cooled. If you load it up with a ton of warm food, it's going to maybe start to thaw it a little bit, and it'll struggle for a little while before it gets cool. Sometimes when you pick up the RV, we may have some bottles in here for you. I do that when we go, just in case I forget to turn the switch on for the refrigerator or something, or the house battery, and my fridge starts to thaw. Maybe that could save some of my food. These are also handy if you go on the beach and you want to throw a couple in the cooler to keep your cooler cold. This latch is not my favorite. You do sometimes have to just lift it up to make sure that's closed. Okay, in the refrigerator. Not much to say here. This cools from up above. There is a little hose in the back. If you knock that hose loose, that's the drain plug for the fridge or freezer when it's dripping or thawing. It drains outside. If you knock that loose, it can drain into the fridge, and extra moisture and water in the fridge will make it harder for it to cool your food down. Convection oven, there's a little rack that goes in here. Will be in here and a disc to kind of rotate on. We find it helpful if you're doing like microwaving some food on just the glass tray. It also works good if you want to put a couple small frozen pizzas or something in the freezer. Our kids like to do. You hit the pizza button and it'll make you a nice pizza, but we don't really use that a lot. But basically, you know, pizza, popcorn, and just the general microwave. Okay, just a quick on the thermostat here. You're gonna just hit this and tap this bottom button to go through the different modes. Pretty self-explanatory. If you do cool, for whatever reason, they recommend that you try to keep it on high. It works well. For some reason you hold this button down, it will start to kind of change the settings, or but you know, so just be sure to tap that. And again, you want to have that shut off, everything off. If you're unplugging from a power supply or disconnecting the power for the RV in any way, you want to have everything off except just the low voltage lighting and refrigerator.